Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. My name is Chet and I'm your host. Today we have painter, illustrator Eric Fortune. Eric Fortune is a really talented artist, and we go way back showing together. He's got a really interesting story about his experience in the gallery world, and yeah, it's great. Super cool guy. And I've loved his work since I first saw it. So been wanting to hit him up for a while to come on, and excited to finally have him on. So great interview there. Coming up, what's been up with me? I have been finishing study commissions. I have been working on mystery box stuff because mystery boxes are coming up. It's that time of the year. So got some really cool stuff I'm really excited about the mystery boxes this year. I'm having some stuff made especially for the boxes, and I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they are super cool. So those will be going on sale probably Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or whenever that is after Thanksgiving. Unless you're on my Patreon, I usually release things early on my Patreon. If you want to join my Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/chetzar. And for only $1 a month, you get access to all of my new releases before anybody else. You get to see everything I'm working on before all of their social media. It's really a good deal. Also, if you want to support this podcast, go to Dark Art Society, patreon.com/Dark Art Society, and join for as little as $1. And this is how we keep the podcast going, is through your support. So I appreciate everybody who at least throws a buck in a month. That's why I'm able to keep doing it. I'm right at the limit. Because compared to the time I put in to make these podcasts, financially, it's just barely worth it. It's not bringing in that much money, but it's just barely enough to make it worth it. And I have to say, the biggest reason I'm doing it, I've said this many times on the podcast, everything I do has to make money because I live in this stupid society where that's the case. But so if it wasn't making any money, I couldn't do it. But I I the pot the this podcast, I'm always complaining it's not as big as it should be. I think it's so good. I think the interviews and artists that come on are so interesting, especially when you compare them to like mainstream podcasts of just celebrity interviews and influencers. I just I'm just out of step with the rest of the world, I guess. Probably all of us who listen are, but I just feel like more people should be hearing this podcast. So I really want to grow it for that reason. And the reason I keep doing it is because I hear all the time how important this podcast is to people, just, mainly artists that are trying to make it in the art scene and just like to hear other artists' experience. And so it would be easier for me to stop, but I could probably make more money if I stopped doing the podcast and put it towards commission work or stuff like that. But I know that the podcast, people who do listen to the podcast love it. So that's kind of the thing that pushes me over the edge. It makes me keep doing it every week. So I had kind of a moment about a week ago where I'm like, I just gotta stop doing this. It takes up too much time every single week. And but I'm not giving up. I'm just not gonna giving up, especially the worse things get in the world, the more of this kind of content is needed. I think people need it more than ever. And so I'm not going to let the bastards win. Fuck them. Anyway, if you can support, I would appreciate it. We are also supported by Skull Shop, SKULLSHOPPE. That's one of their skulls. And the way they support is they offer a 20% off coupon to any of their human replica skulls to anybody who joins at the $5 and above level. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, they're great. Their skulls are great. What else? I think that's it. Man. Oh, and if you join the Dark Art Society Patreon, you get your name read on the podcast. And this week we have Skyquack. Thank you. Chris Willits. Thank you. Joseph Arsenault. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're making it happen. Okay, let's get on with the interview because it's really great, really fun, really good. And here we go with Eric Fortune. Hope you enjoy it. Hello, Eric.
Hey, what's up, Chet?
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, dude. It's it's an honor, man. I've been a fan of your work for a while, so it's awesome to be here.
I appreciate it. I've been a fan of your work for a long time. In fact, I remember when you came onto the gallery scene, you were like this mysterious, like elite artist, and everyone was like wondering about you because like all of a sudden you're showing and you're in magazines and Spectrum and you're doing this like super high quality work that everyone's like super impressed with, but we didn't know anything about you, at least like my circle in LA, and you just seemed like this, like an elite guy, like an elite artist, and so it was always kind of, like, I don't know, you were up above, kind of, in a way.
It's funny to hear that because like I've always felt like I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like it's just been
yeah, it's
constantly struggling to like try and make decent work, and then on top of trying to make decent work, like trying to just make a living as an artist, which is super challenging. I mean, it has been for me at least.
Oh, yeah.
And
I talk about it every podcast. I complain about it pretty much.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so I mean that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
But
yeah. It's funny.
I maintain my mystery.
It's funny because we have perceptions of each other as peers, and if you don't know the person, you just kind of judge them by their artwork, and so it's just like
I still do that. I'm like, I bet they're rich. They're fucking. Totally. Oh, sorry, I don't know if we can curse on
Yes,
here.
we can curse. We curse all the time.
Okay. Yeah, like everyone's living their best life except me.
Right.
They got so many, and nowadays it's like, oh, they got so many followers. What the hell?
Yep. I mean, I had Brahm on the podcast, and which was huge for me because I'm such a huge Brahm fan. And it was the same way. Brahm is like one of the reasons I started painting is seeing his books, his original, those books he came out with in the 90s. And he had the same feelings like you're talking about. Like he was really, I got to have him on again because now that we're doing video, I'd love to have him on, but because he was just on the audio podcast, it was years ago. And he was talking about same insecurities that we have, the same thing. And it's like, Brahm, even if Brahm feels this way, then we're all just screwed. Yeah, right. This is just part of being an artist. It has nothing to do with how big you get or whatever,
Yeah, for sure. For me.
Yeah, it's just, that's one thing, I've interviewed, this is going to be episode 301, and not every episode has been an interview, but the vast majority have been. So hundreds of artists I've interviewed on here. And it's always the same story. Always. Everyone.
It's funny because when I first started to become familiar with the people in the gallery scene, it seemed like a bunch of them were on the West Coast. At the time, it wasn't Facebook yet. It was MySpace.
MySpace. Yep.
And so I specifically remember seeing like people like you and like Lori Early, like I love her
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
And I was just like, okay, they're not doing publishing, because I didn't know about like the whole kind of like pop surreal lowbrow gallery scene at all. And I was like seeing, being introduced to all this work and just like these like awesome paintings. And I was like, what's going on? Like, how do you become a part of that? Like, what's going on over there? But I specifically remember um, seeing your work as well and just being like, I want to do that. That looks awesome. Like, because
That's so cool.
to be honest, like when I was in art school, like my dream was to like become an illustrator and do like sci-fi fantasy book covers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this vision in my head, like I'm going to be 93 and, NPR is going to do this cover. It's like, oh, illustrator Eric Fortune dies at easel, with a paintbrush in his hand, and you're working on yet like another book cover. And then like, and not to dog publishing in any way at all, because I had like really a lot of like great experiences doing that type of work. But ultimately, I became kind of disillusioned, and I wasn't it wasn't fulfilling enough for me, and I wasn't having enough time to kind of do those personal pieces that it looked like everyone in the gallery scene were like doing these really cool, interesting pieces that you could tell there wasn't an art director or an editor or some dude in marketing who was just going, change this, tweak that, we can't have that. Like there's young kids, it's like you come up with this idea and, maybe it's good or bad or whatever. And, but then, it gets chiseled away at, and then you do the best of your ability to like bring that to life, but it's never quite like
your own.
Just your own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the story of my life in makeup effects. This is exactly the story. It's like, you just are constantly dealing with that kind of compromise over and over. And it's, it's one thing when you've got a great art director that you jive with, and you're like,
sure.
and you're working together to make something better. But, in Hollywood, especially, that's so often not the case. And more often than not, it's, make the design more safer, make the creature look appealing to 9-year-old boys. This is our target demographic or whatever. I've gotten these notes that are just so stupid. And when that happens enough, and then you're fighting for your idea. You're like, I know this is better than what you want me to do. And then you find yourself fighting to make their project better, and they're making you make it worse. And then I was like, why am I doing this? This makes me feel like I'm crazy or stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I completely relate to you. So, tell me about your. I know nothing about you other than your art, and your name is Eric Fortune, and so let's hear the story of your how you got into art and going to school and all that, and how you wound up where you are today. Just before we get into the other stuff, just kind of a overview.
long walks on the beach. Yeah, I mean, I think my story is very similar to most of the other artists I know. It's like you started drawing in first, second grade, loved it, never stopped doing it, even though like I think I took maybe a year and a half or 2 years off when I was in like junior high, because it was like, okay, Eric, what are you going to do with all these drawings? It's like you got to focus on your homework and all this other stuff. So like 7th through 8th grade, I think I wasn't drawing that much, just like on the margins of like my notebook paper. But thankfully, I mean, personally, I just feel like there are so many people who intervened in my life that kind of steered me in a direction that put me where I'm at today. And without that, I totally wouldn't be an artist.
That's cool.
Yeah. For example, my grade school art teacher, Miss Cheney, rest in peace. She was so encouraging. And then my high school teacher, she ended up really helping me a lot because she had gone to the same art school I went to. And she was like, I know what their freshman year program is like, and I know what the portfolio review is looking for. So just do this, 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 and this, and I'll help you build this portfolio. And, I ended up getting like a decent scholarship.
Oh, wow.
But I had, I was completely clueless. So if I didn't have that guidance, like I was thinking the closest thing that I could think of, because I didn't know any professional artists growing up.
Right.
Maybe I'll get into like architecture because it seems kind of designy. Like I had no idea what the options were.
Right.
And I only applied to one school. So if like I wasn't getting into, I went to the Columbus College of Art and Design. If I didn't get in there, like I didn't know what I was going to do.
So you were born in Ohio? This is where you grew up? Okay. So you're totally cut off from any of the entertainment centers of the world.
I know nothing about that stuff at all growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But Devo is from Ohio, so you got that going for you. You know Devo? Devo, the band.
Oh, not that much, really.
They're amazing. Devo is amazing. Devo is amazing.
All right. Well,
I'm telling you.
I'm actually going to write it down right now.
I'm a huge fan, and they are they often get passed off as like a novelty band, but they weren't. They were like an art rock band. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I'll steer you in the right direction because they have a few clinkers in there, but their first I think 4 or 5 albums are just like masterpieces, totally amazing. Okay, sorry for that, but that's whenever I'm cool. Such a fan. Every time I hear Ohio, I'm like Devo's from Ohio.
That's cool. Yeah, I grew up listening to like hip hop mostly. Like I remember LL Cool J coming out when I was in like 2nd grade, and I was hooked.
There is I know that Devo was fans of hip hop music. So there's a lot of synthesizer and stuff like that. So there's crossover there. I think you can be a hip hop fan and a Devo fan. But anyway,
I definitely like. Oh yeah. Anyways, it's the music podcast.
Back to your life story. Okay, I just wanted to make the point that you were in Ohio and you had one option, which is to get into school.
Yeah. So yeah, man, it's been a while. Art school, did well, got out, was super freaked out because I don't know. I'm 47, so like maybe we're like a little bit older. And back in the day, it was kind of like, like what company are you going to work for full time?
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know any professional illustrators. I didn't know any freelancers. And what we learned about it in college was like, looking back, kind of minimal. So it was like pretty scary graduating. You're like, okay, cool. I got to start paying loans back in 6 months. And I don't know, anyone graduating college, I mean, back in the day, at least, like, you can tell the work it's good. It's not professional yet. And I was just super freaked out, but
I would love to see your college work. I bet your college work was really good.
Some of it, well, like I Spectrum, Spectrum, the fantasy annual book. When they were getting started earlier on, they had one edition where they took college entries and they had like just a college section, and they only took like published 3 pieces, and one of my pieces got in, so that was kind of like
which one is it?
Early win. Oh shit! I'd have to
describe it because it's like posted on your socials and stuff. I'm sure I've seen it. If it's been in Spectrum, because I think that's where I first found you, was in Spectrum.
The image is some weird alien, spiky haired alien chick who's like sitting uh, on like a wooden post. She's kind of like chained to it, and it's kind of like a Michael Whalen-esque
Okay.
scene. So you get to like strong foreground, and then
Man, I
there's this
can't. Okay,
deep
I can't.
background.
I can't think of it. Maybe I haven't seen it. Is it on your Instagram?
No, I
Okay.
haven't posted that piece. Well, I was probably like a sophomore or
Yeah,
junior when I made that
just for
piece,
my own
so
just for
I'm not
my
proud of it.
text me a picture of it when we're done, just for my own personal. I want to see.
Sure.
I want to see because I bet you it was really good.
Well, I wasn't using photo reference at the time,
Okay.
so it was kind of like I was doing the best I could with what I could do in my head.
I hear
So
you. I get it. I'm just so curious.
yeah,
Okay.
and
Anyway, so.
yeah, I'll send it to you. But I will say this: that is one of the things I learned in college that really made a huge difference in my work was I went from making everything up out of my head
Hmm.
to taking my own personal photo reference. And it was rough in the beginning because I bought a 33 millimeter camera and I had no idea how to use it. So I'm like taking shots and then going to cord camera to get it developed because that's what you did back in the day.
Mm.
And I'd picked up 3 days later and like 80% of them were just black. How does this work? And I always wanted to take like photo 101, like in college, but
Yeah.
like my schedule just didn't work out.
You got to
So,
figure out the f
you know,
stops and all that stuff that I
yeah,
still don't
it was
understand.
a bunch of wasted money.
Yeah, people take it for granted now with
Developing,
camera phones, man. It's like
it's so
it's
easy.
so easy, but back in the day, you had to wait a week to get your film developed and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
I mean, I was even using like Polaroid cameras and I would like tape over the flash so I could try and get my own lighting,
Oh
but then it
wow.
would come out super grainy. But it was like you'd have this like general sense of lighting and
You're right.
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
But once I started getting proper photo reference, like yeah, it made a huge deal in my work.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the things I say often when I like maybe I'll post like a process post with one of my pieces, and it's like thumbnail sketch, refine drawing, photo reference. And I
Hmm.
always let people know if like they're beginners or whatever, like go get your own photo reference. It's really worth it.
Oh yeah.
Grab your family, grab your friend,
Yep.
pose for it yourself if you have to. Like just get some good information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically.
Especially with the kind of stuff that you do, which is always like a weird angle or like up above, coming down. Like you never
Yeah.
do. I mean, this is why a lot of these are. I mean, this one over here is kind of one of my own. This is like a movie commission thing, but uh,
Mhm.
you know, this is why when I do my monsters, part of the reason I settled on just portraiture is like I can make that up out of my head. you know, it's like because I was a sculptor for so long and I've been drawing all my life,
God,
so I was able to do that. But I couldn't do like one of your paintings without
I
reference.
can barely do one of my paintings. It's
But I mean,
that's
but
a struggle.
yeah, we're gonna get into that because I am really dying to know your technique. But yeah, just it's the kind of work that you do. You have to have reference. I don't, maybe some super genius like Frazetta wouldn't need reference or something. He was kind of like a
Yeah,
weird anomaly
yeah,
like
I'm not
that.
that.
But
Yeah, at all.
but man, no, there's no way. There's no way because that's what's one of the things of the many things that's so impressive about your work is that you've got these strange angles and weird positions and they're just super dynamic and uh yeah, it's so you too. It really looks like your work. It's really really great. I love it. Love your work. It's amazing.
Thanks. Um, yeah, like I used to draw all the time, like high school, um, college. I'll be like just out of my head, and I just don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you see my refined sketch to final drawing after my photo reference, like that's when you realize how bad I am at anatomy. Like the upper body's at this angle, the lower body's at this other
Right.
angle, nothing makes sense. And I think that's part of the struggle for me because like I'm in my head, I had this vision. And so I do my thumbnail sketch. And it's really, it's like chicken scratch.
Hmm.
But I'm like, that's what I want. Like that's the basic energy that I want. So I try to maintain as much of that as possible. But then that requires me to like take a bunch of photo reference and like Frankenstein it
Yeah.
together in a way that like just is physically impossible, but it has to feel like it makes
Yeah, it
sense.
has to
And
feel natural. Okay,
yeah, and it's
I'm
always a struggle.
yeah, I'm dying to get into this stuff, but let's finish up with your story because I am curious how you kind of
Yeah,
like got into illustration and the gallery scene and stuff. And I mean, I really want to talk about the stuff we were just talking about, but I want to kind of get this part out of the way, just
yeah, yeah,
so people
yeah,
have a background on you.
for sure. Let me see. So graduated, graduated college, um, got a job at this place called Gooseberry Patch, which Gooseberry Patch. It's kind of like we used to sell cookbooks. They used to sell cookbooks in like Cracker Barrel,
Okay.
so it was like that type of demographic. Like I was doing product illustrations of wreaths and uh, candles that looked like apple pies and wood carved Americana, flag thingies. And like it was that. And I did that for about 5 years.
Oh
But,
wow,
I poke fun at it, but like great people, really good
I
experience.
bet.
And also just like financial stability and healthcare.
Yeah, right. A
Like,
regular job.
and like, so I was doing that Monday to Friday. And then it was like after work or on the weekends, I'm going to try and build up my personal portfolio with personal pieces. And those are the pieces that I ended up kind of like trying to email to an art director or just share with friends. And hopefully they would share with someone they knew and
Hmm.
in order to try and get some work. And did that for about 5 years. But eventually, one of those emails and things did pan out a bit. A guy I went to school with, I was sharing, you know, a new piece, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to send this to my Illustrator rep, and maybe they'll be interested." And they were, so I ended up working with them for a while
Hmm.
and doing freelance like that, and then um, getting some of my own work here and there as well.
Doing like book
And
covers and stuff.
yeah, I started off small with like quarter page interior illustrations for like regional magazines. And to be honest, I think that worked out for me the best because um, just throughout my career, I feel like when I step up to a new level, like I always get really freaked out and I kind of like, I'm a little stiff.
Hmm.
And so I got to kind of like do a few pieces, get comfortable, and then I'll start to loosen up and like make better work. And just kind of like slowly building up some of that confidence, I
Hmm.
guess. Eventually, you get like a full page interior, and then you'll get a cover, and then
Right.
you'll get a book cover. And like every time I like went up to another level, I'd be like, like, don't ruin this, Eric. It's just freaking out all the time. Um, but yeah, I did that for like I've noticed a pattern in my life is it's about like every 5 years something will shift. It was
Mm.
kind of like high school 4 years, college 4 years, gooseberry patch, my first art job for about 5 years, and then um, jumped into being a full-time freelancer about 5 years,
Mm.
and then um, I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and I had brought like a portfolio with some of my work in it. And it was like one of those big brown paper portfolios,
Hmm.
just like a big bag type thing. And it was
Hmm.
like, several original paintings. Cause I had, started to get to know some of the people in the industry, like Dan Dos Santos, Donato
Oh
Giancola,
yeah.
like, and And that was from like getting accepted into like Society of Illustrators or something. And you're like, I did it. I'm going to go to the party in New York and try to meet people or whatever. And slowly, made friends. So I brought that just to like share with, people I knew in the industry. And as I was showing it to a friend, a guy walked by, and um, he saw the work and he really liked it. And he was repping a handful of other people in the gallery scene. And so I was like, oh, cool. This could like, maybe this is where I like an opportunity I've been waiting for. So that worked out for a while. I took that jump. I thought maybe I'll do illustration and gallery work at the same time so I could try and have some of that like financial stability as I'm trying to do this other thing. But like my brain just couldn't do it. So I felt like I had to just go all in on the gallery thing. So I did that for several years, and things, personally, I feel like I've made, probably the best work of my life during that time. It was the amount of freedom that I wanted, excuse me, and just to be able to do my own thing. And I feel like I made some of the best work of my life. But, during that time, I was the most poor I've ever been. It was really rough. Like, after doing that for several years and just this kind of like instability of like, I don't know if the work's going to sell. It really needs to sell. Like, I got bills.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was like so stressful. And I started to, that kind of like chronic stress. I just started to associate that with like art making in general. And eventually I reached this breaking point where I started to get really worried that if I don't stop now and pull back from this stress, that I might end up just hating art, like just hating it. And that like really scared me. So I just started telling everyone, I was like, look, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. I can't plan out next year's shows. I can't do any more shows. I really, really need a break. And it was really hard for me because I think like letting yourself down is one thing, but like just the way I was raised, it was kind of like, letting other people down, not meeting your deadline,
totally, man.
Like having this really strong sense of work ethic instilled to me.
It's hard saying no especially when people, galleries are like asking you to do shows, and it's hard to turn them down, when you need to. I was wondering what happened to you, because you were going so strong in the gallery scene, and then it just seemed like you disappeared from the gallery scene.
I mean, I totally did. I took about 5 years off.
Wow.
Just to let myself heal, to be honest.
Wow.
I needed it.
Yeah,
I really
stressful, man.
I was on the brink. Like I said, like if I've always wanted to be an artist, and maybe an illustrator, whatever. And then I go to art school, I become a professional, I'm doing book covers, and then I'm doing art stuff, and like, feeling like I'm making the best work. Now, if I'm not doing that anymore, like, who am I? What am I?
Right.
If like a huge part of my identity is art making, and if I'm not making art, like, what am I doing in this world?
Right.
And it was just this crazy, it took a few years for me to just kind of process that, and then kind of let go, and kind of like have these realizations, like I'm more than an artist.
Right.
Like I have other interests. It's not all about career. It's not all about a job and status.
Yeah,
and,
your value as a human being isn't based on the art you create.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. And like it took me time to really internalize that. Um, and so, um, yeah, that time off, like I really needed it. I think I did like one drawing and one painting throughout that
Wow.
5 years.
That's crazy. So what were
And
you?
even,
Oh no, go.
go ahead.
Well, what'd you do for money? What were you doing for money during that time?
I, at first, my family, my mom's from Vietnam.
Okay.
And my father, they separated when I was really young, but they met during the Vietnamese War.
Hmm.
Um, and I grew up in a small town in this place called Coshocton, Ohio. And so my mom um, ended up opening a nail salon in that town. And I'd had my nail license on the side for a while at that point
Oh,
because, it's
really?
just like backup plan. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you need like a pedicure or something, hit me up.
Yeah.
I'll pay you money. Let me
That's
get my
awesome.
foot fetish in.
That's great.
Nah, but yeah, so I ended up like doing um doing like acrylic nails, extensions,
Wow.
manicures,
What a
pedis,
trip. That's
like
crazy.
yeah. But looking back, it was like surprisingly this awesome part of my life
Right.
because um my brother does nails and um you look at nail art, it's weird. It's like a little art tangent, but like you're looking at nail art and you go, oh, that's cool. But like, I'm a professional artist,
Right.
I
Right.
can do this or that, whatever. Dude,
It.
doing nail art is like fucking
Oh,
hard.
it's a
And
thing.
so,
Yeah, and it's popular now. It's like I don't know if it was when you were doing it, but or back when you took that break, but man, it's like a big thing on social media now. The stuff they're doing is incredible. It's
yeah, some of them are
crazy,
like
man.
sculpture now,
Yep, they're like
but
sculpture and these
all
really
types of stuff.
detailed paintings and stuff. It's like
Yeah.
it really is an art form, really.
Yeah. So the thing is like my older brother is like a pimp ass nail artist, and until you try to do it you're just like, I didn't have a respect for it
Right.
until I was trying to do it. I'm like, wow, this is super hard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
um Not everyone paints on like a tiny canvas that's curved, that's connected to a breathing, you know moving, sneezing human,
Right, right.
whatever.
Well, not only that, it's like I am aware of how nails are done because in effects we used to use
Hmm.
that monomer and that acrylic that where
Yeah.
for making teeth and dentures and stuff and making nails for creatures. So I would see, them put I would see videos of people doing it and they drip the monomer and the acrylic powder. I don't know if that's how you did it, but you kind of build up
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
powder and they're like polishing it and buffing it. And it's like, I know what they're doing is hard. I've done this
Yeah.
making teeth before and it's not easy. It really
Yeah.
takes a lot of,
And you
uh,
got this
work.
Dremel and you're like
Yep.
drilling it off this person's nail, and if you're
Oh,
not careful you could like drill into their bone.
yeah.
Like, it's pretty freaky. I mean, I don't have any tattoos, but like I imagine doing giving someone a tattoo. I
Yeah.
think I'd be really freaked out if I were to try and do that. Just
Yeah.
like I'm going to jack this person up.
Yeah. Yeah. You're poking their skin with a needle,
Yeah.
making permanent
But
marks.
it ended up being awesome for me because I I was like spending a lot of time with my mom
Yeah.
and my brother, and they were running the shop, and it was like really laid back.
Yeah. Like talk about going from
Environment.
like extreme pressure to totally low pressure to where it's like
Yeah,
you're around people that love you and,
yeah,
money, a regular paycheck. And,
yeah.
it's like the opposite of being an artist, you know?
Well, and like well, my mom passed away several years back, and
Mm.
so being able to spend a lot of time with her in those, back then, it was like, yeah, don't regret that
Oh yeah,
at all. It was
absolutely.
it was it worked out. It was really nice.
That's great.
Um, yeah, and just having that breather from like not feeling forced to create something when you're just not feeling it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
But
great that you were able to do that. You know, to realize that's what you needed to do. Because I know how hard it is to. It would be hard for me to like. I could do it. You know, I could say, okay, I got to
yeah,
stop for 5 years and go back to effects or whatever, get kind of like a normal job. But it would be really
Mhm.
difficult. I understand. So I understand how hard that must have been to do. But yeah, it seems like it was obviously the right choice, especially you get to spend that time with your mother and your family and stuff. Because that's like when
Yeah,
your
yeah,
parents die, it's like that's when you realize how important family is. It's like, you know,
man.
you don't get that back. So it's like everybody out
Yeah,
there whose parents are alive, spend time with them while you can,
amen.
you know?
Amen. It's it's a shitty way to like reprioritize your life, you know,
Right.
and find out someone you love is sick and
Yep.
whatever. But and that's one thing. Not to get too much on a tangent, but like our society is obsessed with work
Yep.
and productivity
Totally, man.
and more and more. And
Grind it out,
like
man.
I've
Alpha
been trying to.
bros.
What's that?
Alpha bros, grind it out. Just keep grinding and grinding and
Yeah, hustle
grinding.
culture, man. It's like, yeah, it's. I mean, I used to be like that because, like I said, my mom, she met my father during in the Vietnam War, you know, in Vietnam because he
Mm,
was in the military. So when she came to the U.S., she had this insane work ethic.
yeah.
Like I grew up, my mom's working at the bacon factory. She comes home, she's going into the basement, she's like sewing gloves.
Wow.
Um, yeah, part of my work history is as a kid sewing gloves in the basement with my mom. You know, so it's like typical, you know, Vietnamese sweatshop type stuff. I did it. My brothers did it. My cousins did it. It was
Wow.
totally illegal.
Hey, it's a family business.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's like you just want to. You're helping the
Yeah,
fam.
absolutely. That's cool, I think.
I mean, it sucked at the time. You just
Yeah,
want to go
but I mean,
outside and play. But
yeah, but still, you know, it's that
again, yeah.
it's
Looking back, it's like
valuable.
you don't regret it.
Yeah, yeah,
But you know,
absolutely.
like I was saying, like that type of work ethic is what I got from my mom because she was always grinding.
Hmm.
But you know, I think at some point, like on an individual level and on a like a societal level, it's like generations of people have worked so hard, have like innovated so much, have given us all these amazing technologies that we have today. And what's the point of it all if not to like be a little bit more free,
Yeah,
to like
yeah,
not have to grind,
I
to
know.
like it's one thing when you have a passion and you want to work like 15 hours on something you absolutely love because you're into it and it's self-directed, it's your own thing. But if you feel like you just have to do that and it's for a boss and
Yeah,
you kind of hate your job, which
yeah,
you
which
know
is most people. That's how, well,
most people don't love their jobs
right.
like at all.
Yep.
And you know, like
That's no way to live.
it's but it's like just a part of the culture, you know, and
Hmm.
I feel like it's something that'll probably take us a long time to kind of break away from. But again, man, like at some point your parents are not going to be with you anymore. And it's like it's a weird, it's a wake up call, I guess,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's
But
you know that I have that work ethic also. My grandfather was you know, my dad was a really hard worker. My stepdad was a really hard worker. My grandfather was a really hard worker. So I definitely have that genetically or even just from being in that environment.
mhm.
But there's like, there's a point where it's too far. I've been talking about this lately. It keeps coming up on the podcast, or maybe I keep bringing it up because I've been thinking about it. It's like there's a point where it's too far. It's too hard. Like, you know, I've had a few shows where I felt like I hope I don't die in my sleep. Like I was so exhausted from just like
Mhm.
grinding it and pushing and pushing and pushing and not getting enough sleep, and like actually almost having a panic attack when I'm going to bed at night. Like, I hope I don't die tonight. That's like too far. You know,
Yeah.
grinding is one thing, working hard is one thing, but when you're like pushing yourself to the point of where it's affecting your health seriously, it's like nothing matters
And
if you don't have your health. It's like nothing,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And I was so stressed out, like during, like I said, it was like it's a weird dynamic because I'm making the best work of my life,
Right.
and I am like just like so stressed out the entire time.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I'm sure I'm like I used to have so much hair.
Dude,
It's like gallery scene, boom.
that happened to me when I was working in effects. We started like a digital department in the practical makeup effects shop, and I was the one who knew how to do 3D animation and 2D compositing and stuff. And we got our first job, and it was my first job on a movie. It was this movie called Altered, this alien movie. And I was in charge of all the digital effects, and I was doing it all by myself, not realizing how much work it was. And I was so stressed about it that I would go out on my breaks and my hair would just be falling out. I would just pull like, I was like,
Crazy.
oh no, my hair's falling out. That's bad.
Dang, that's crazy. Yeah.
So I feel you. For me, it's like I had to. I mean, I get definitely get that desperate feeling from time to time, especially when extra bills come due and you don't have the money, which is every month pretty much. But but it's like that is like this weird balance that you have to strike. When you're creating work, if as an artist doing your passion, what you love, you want to make amazing work. You want every piece to be just like amazing. That's the satisfaction, is just to make this amazing piece. And so in order to make an amazing piece, you have to relax and like get into it and get into that flow state and just like feel it. And know the feeling like when you're doing a great piece. But then you've got this pressure on top of you of like all this money that you owe, or bills or whatever, or you don't have the rent or whatever. And so for me, it's always been like, okay, I have to separate. I somehow have to let go of worrying about it, and so I guess meditation has helped a lot, just a general anxiety and stuff. I'm not saying I have it all under control, because I definitely have freakouts from time to time, but I found that just by like trusting that I'm gonna do it somehow, I felt like in order to make the work to keep going, I have to go like, I'm 50. I'm gonna be 56 this month, so I've been doing this. I've been working since I got out of high school, 18, 19 years old. So however many years that is, 40 years or whatever, 35 years or whatever. I never have been out on the street. I never have lost everything. I've always managed. And so I can't imagine I'm going to get this far and then just lose everything because I can't make my bills 1 month, so it's like this weird Zen state I've had to try and cultivate, It's not easy though. It's not easy. I would rather have taken the 5 years off like you did.
Yeah.
But so what? So, okay, what are you doing now? Are you like kind of?
Oh, well,
what happened after the 5 years of taking
so
off?
I took some time off, and I was working at my family's nail salon for maybe a year and a half or two.
Okay.
And a friend reached out, and there was a job opening at this place where they did like practical effects stuff, and it was like for like haunts.
Oh, no way, really?
Type stuff. Yeah, so I ended up doing like, I didn't know. It was a rough transition for me, but I ended up getting into this place. I won't say the name because I really don't like the owner,
Okay,
but
okay.
but
That's
you know,
cool though. I mean,
doing
that's a pretty
like
cool job.
pulling molds, pouring foam, like latex
Excellent.
stuff, like
Now you're talking my
light
language.
ties, monsters and zombies,
Yeah.
animatronics,
Oh,
and it
cool.
was it was um it was a great job as far as like the type of work that I was doing.
Aside from the asshole boss.
Everything but the asshole boss. The coworkers are super cool. Like I met some amazing sculptors,
Hmm.
um, and I did that for about 5 years as
Wow.
well. And then that, and I will say it was nice because I ended up downshifting to like a 3-day work week. Like they were pretty flexible, and that was
That's
really nice.
cool. Yeah.
And that was like so I left my family's salon. I started working at this other place, and
Mhm.
then when my mom got sick, I asked for that 3-day week, and so that was nice. And
Great.
I spent a lot of time with my family. Um, and yeah, then COVID hit. So during that, there was a shutdown, and then we went back for like a month, and then there was another shutdown, and then the government was like, okay, we're going to help people get through this. So I get this check from the government, and I because one of my friends was like, did you apply for this? He's like, you better do that. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. I hate paperwork, but like
All
it
right.
worked out. I got a chunk of change from.
That PPE loan thing or whatever.
No, it was straight up like grant, like type, you don't have to pay it back.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but that chunk of money basically enabled me to. I renovated my studio. I had this long talk with my partner about like, is maybe I can start making art again. Like maybe I've had enough time off. Like maybe with this I can try and be an artist again. And so like it's been a few years of like trying to shake the rust off
Uh-huh.
and make new work. And then like, well, I don't think I want to do publishing as much anymore. I mean, who knows? Maybe a little bit here and there if the job's interesting, but um, you know, gallery shows, would be fine as long as it's not like my main source of income because
Yeah.
I kind of don't want to put myself in that position again.
Yeah. You know what? That's the
And
thing. Gallery shows were never my main source of income. I was
yeah, I
because I was selling. I've always made most of my money selling merchandise and prints and stuff for my web store and hustling that way.
well, that's see when I got into the gallery thing, I was like not pushing my stuff in that way, and
Right.
and also like I didn't have the portfolio that was like full of like all of my favorite pieces yet because I was making them
Right.
in the gallery scene. But like the my schedule while I was doing gallery work, it was just so crammed um, that I didn't have enough time to kind of like really understand and try and get my like a web store set
Yeah.
up and like push prints and stuff.
Marketing and all. That's like that's where it's like you are running a business. It's not artistic. It's a totally
Yeah.
different part of your brain, and you have to. For me, it was like not did not come naturally. I had to kind of learn
Mhm.
marketing just on my own, and and it's a separate thing. It's like a totally
Yeah.
separate thing. It's kind of like if it was the old days, it would be like you're running a mail order business
Hmm.
and then you're an artist at night. It's like in the day I'm running this business, shipping, packing, and in the nighttime I'm painting. So it's still this weird and trying to find joy in that because you are still able to make cool shit if you want, and it's like
Yeah.
that the whole game becomes it's not just about self-expression, it's about and creating art, it's about self-expression and creating art and selling it and how you can sell it. and make a living. So it's like added, it's not just the fun part. It's like it adds this other layer of, okay, I want to make this. Are people going to buy this? Or I'm going to make this, or how can I sell this to make enough money to justify the time I just spent sculpting this thing or whatever? You know what I mean? Which is a
Yeah.
drag, but it's like
Yeah.
that's what allowed me to keep creating artwork, which is the ultimate goal, you know? Cuz I had gone, I don't know, 15 years, 15 or 20 years in effects,
Oh, wow.
which used to be my dream growing up as a kid. All throughout junior high and high school, it was like, that's it, makeup effects. I was totally into it, man. And then I got to that point where that we were talking about, where it's, you know, you're getting art directed and to
Yeah.
death. And then I was like, I have to get out of this, because I got scared that I wasn't going to be able to get out of it, like, because I didn't have any other skills really. And so once I was able to make the transition, I was like, I have to make this work somehow. So I had to like learn about getting t-shirts printed and, you know, selling $20 things, selling enough to
Yeah.
make it all work out. So, and then like, because gallery sales were never enough to keep me afloat ever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, that's kind of the conclusion I've come to recently is like, well, while I was in the gallery scene, my goal was like, okay, I know, not a lot of people are going to like make it, you know, to whatever the top is, but like where you could just paint whatever you want
Right.
and then, you know, at your leisure and make enough money to survive. But like that's where I was kind of putting all my eggs in one basket. I was like, let's just try really fucking hard
Mm-hmm.
and go all out. Um, and you know, for a moment, it was like it was kind of interesting. Well, the gallery scene's kind of interesting because there's like rumors floating around, and there's like galleries stealing artists from each
Yeah.
other, and like all that stuff's like it's kind of intriguing. So I'm like learning all this stuff, and I was
Yeah.
like, this place is crazy. I'm like, what's
Yeah,
going on?
yeah. And it's like some, you know, some gallery people that run galleries are shady as hell, and then some are really cool, and it's like, you know, I feel like I know who the good people are now after all these years. You know,
Mm,
people have reputations and stuff.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
any other business, you know.
yeah. Um, but yeah, and so I was like, my goal at the time was like, you know, like I'm just going to go really hard at this and take it as far as I can. But like I said, eventually I got really really burned out. Um, and you know, now I'm at this point where I'm like, I have years and years of all this work that I'm not making prints of, that I'm not putting
Yeah,
on anything, and I should take advantage of that.
definitely.
And so that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, there's no way there's no way you can't make it doing prints and merchandise of your work. There's no way. Your stuff is way too cool, you know. It's like it's a lot more marketable than what I do, and I'm making it work, you know what I mean? So
Your stuff seems like it. I mean,
it's
yeah,
mark
your stuff is awesome. So like, I
it's
can imagine it just
I appreciate it.
people eating it up for
Yeah,
sure.
but it's very niche, you know. It's niche. It's like
Yeah,
people that like dark monsters and horror stuff. Most people don't like that stuff. Most people like beautiful, elegant women with this surreal edge, like you paint. You know what I mean? Your stuff is it's just more marketable. You know, and but I mean, I guess now's a good time to get into the art stuff that we were talking about, because it's like I love, you know, your stuff has got there's I have so much to say about your work. It's
I'm listening. I'll
I
just listen for the rest of the
yeah, I'll just talk
show.
about you the rest of the show.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, anybody listening, if you haven't seen Eric's work, you'll go look at it and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, he's right." It's like, you know, what I love about it is that you aren't going full on like dark stuff like I do. Like I'm totally committed to going down this road of the
Mhm.
of this really dark stuff. But your stuff has this edge to it, where there's like someone who's into the dark stuff also can appreciate what you're doing, even though you're not fully doing crazy dark stuff like me. It's like you've got a weird, there's like a weird, I can't put it into words. It's like this weird, surreal kind of darkness to me to it, like a mysterious quality. You know what I mean? It's not like, happy, upbeat. It's like there's like some kind of, you know, there's like some suffering there. There's like it's not just it's more marketable than what I'm doing. More people would like it because it's not so obviously disturbing like a lot of the stuff I do, but it still has that dark edge to it, I think, in my opinion, which is one of the reasons I appreciate it. Even if you didn't have that, I would still like it because the technique is so beautiful and the stuff your work is just perfect. Just perfect. Perfect. Just so
Thanks, dude.
it's it, but do you agree? Do you have that edge to it?
Oh yeah, it's definitely perfect.
Not about the
you
perfect
can't,
part,
you
about the
can't spend
edge.
that many hours on something. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, no, like when you said there was like some suffering in there, like that felt right for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. There's a dark.
And
It's like if there's dark. There's a darkness there, but it's subtle. Mine's more like hit you over the head with it, but it's like totally a different trip. But yeah, I like that you have that kind of subtle. Even like the way that sometimes the characters, legs or limbs are cut. Just it's
yeah.
like when I first saw that, I was like that fucker. It's like that is so cool. I wish I
Well,
would have.
like
I wish I would have thought of that because it's so weird and kind of disturbing, but also still works with kind of like the elegance and the line work and everything. I love
like
that.
part of the origins of that for me was I think it was like my junior year of high school. Um, Me and my friends rent some, cartoon at the local VHS place. And I put it in and it's playing. And, at some point it was Fist of the North Star. It's like my first kind of like ultra violent adult like animation.
Oh, okay.
People are just being sliced up. There's blood everywhere, like guts are exploding. And like that first scene when like this dude gets his arms chopped off, like my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, that's what? And I paused it. I'm just like asking all my friends, you guys seeing this? This is fucking crazy. And like, I don't know how many times I've watched Fist of the North Star, but like that was, formative. And then Akira, I'm like, oh man, and I got into anime like a lot back then.
Mm.
And it definitely like, I think for the last like 2 years of high school, like I was probably drawing the most disturbing stuff. Like if my teachers would have turned me in, like, we're kind of worried about this kid, like I would have got it. Like I'd be like, yeah, I understand that. But it's fine. Like and so like that kind of manifested into some of my personal work where um like everyone is going to like suffer at some point. You're going to lose someone you love, you're
Yeah.
going to get a shitty grade,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so that stuff just kind of presents itself. It's and like I don't know, like there's a lot of messed up shit in the world. So the there's sadly there's like a lot of content that I'm taking in that is like, it's dark in nature because our history is dark.
Oh yeah.
And another throwback to like MySpace, when I first became introduced to you and your work, there was one post that you shared, and it was this documentary called Zeitgeist,
Oh yeah.
and and I was like, oh, what's this? And I watched like the first 5 minutes, and it was nothing but like bombs and
I
explosions and
know.
death. And then I stopped it. I was like, this is crazy. Like the music was like really heavy, and it was just like destruction. And like I didn't watch it for like maybe 3 years.
Hmm.
And I ended up watching the sequel first,
Right.
but and then I went back and I watched that first movie. But uh the sequels, like I said, Dan, it like kind of like altered my life path in a major way.
Hmm.
Like I just went on this trajectory that just shot out that way.
Wow.
And
In what
it
way? Becoming like more socially conscious, or
yeah, exactly. Like I just started, I was like um watching these lectures and all these things that I thought were true, or that like the US is the good guy
all
all the
right.
time, and
Yeah.
that human behavior is equals this, and that all these things. I was just like, just all these questions were coming up, and I think what it did for me was it just made me very curious.
Hmm.
And um um and so it's just been like ever since then. I've you know I I hated school. Like it
Oh,
was
me
not
too.
fun for me.
I hated
I did what I did to try and um because my mom, again with the work ethic, she's like,
Yeah.
school is important. You got to do this. You got to get a good job. You
Yeah.
gotta go be a doctor
Yeah.
or a lawyer or whatever, or a priest. But I'm none of those things. And so I hated high school. I didn't like junior high, like
uh,
because learning back then was trash, and how people were taught was not
it's just
interesting, and everything
memorize. It's
was
memorization.
yeah, just rote memory. It was like there are like two moments in high school that like really stuck in my head as like interesting learning moments. But after watching some of those documentaries, like I just became like curious about everything, and
Hmm.
like I never would have expected it. I'm like reading economic books. I'm like reading books
I know
about
you. I
technology and behavior and biology, and I'm like, I'm just an artist, but like I can't help myself. Like
yeah.
I'd rather be reading most of the time than doing a lot of the other stuff
I
I
know.
have to do.
I noticed you posting on Facebook uh years ago. What you were posting, like more political stuff, basically talking about the economy and how fucked everything was with
Yeah.
capitalism and everything. And so I saw that. I noticed that. It's like I kind of I had my moment when I was pretty young, like cuz I got into punk rock when I was like 18 or 19, and I was into Dead Kennedys and stuff, and it's like that's all left politically bent. So I was into all that Noam Chomsky and all that stuff like in the 80s. And then I during the 90s I was raising my family, and I just was kind of like, I can't deal with all this right now. It's like I got kids now and I'm trying to make a
Yeah.
living. And
Yeah.
once they grew up, it's like I'm got back into it. Once I had my some time back, I got back into it. And um uh I don't know, it's like things are so fucked up to such a huge degree that I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's going to go the way it's going to go. And the best I can do really is throw my support behind the things that I think are good as they come up naturally, because there's some kind of I feel like there's some kind of natural energy flow in the way the world moves and the world events. It's like things just happen spontaneously, bad and good. It's like
Yeah,
somehow, and it's like you sort of have to wait for the moment to be
yeah.
to be part of something to make that change. You can't just stand on a street corner. You can, but it's pointless and go like, this is terrible. It's
Yeah.
like you have to be doing it in that moment when the timing is
It's
right.
like
You know what I mean?
I feel I kind of agree with that, but then at the same time, some of like my kind of like intellectual heroes, um, like Chomsky or Howard Zinn,
Yeah, that was a good one.
you know, uh, whether I didn't discover these people until later in my life, like in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out they'd spent the last 50 years
Right.
just doing whatever
True.
it
Yeah,
is they
yeah, yeah.
do. And maybe nobody heard them.
Mm-hmm.
Then YouTube became a thing.
Right.
And then, like, people become interested. It's like 2001, September 11th happens,
Yeah.
right? And my life up to that point was graduate college, get job, you know, uh, try to be secure, meet woman,
Yeah.
maybe have a family,
Yeah, all the
and then
typical.
get a house and a
Yeah.
car, and
Yeah.
then it would just repeat: get a bigger house, and
Right,
then a
right,
nicer
right.
car, and it was like those were the things I was told. That's what life is. That's how
Right.
you do things in the United States.
Right.
And then 9/11 happens, and then everyone is going, "Why do they hate us?" And
Right,
like
right.
no one knew anything. Well, that some people knew.
Right.
Some people like, yeah, Chomsky or Howard Zinn or whoever. And I feel like that was one of those points in history, like maybe like what you're saying. It's like things present themselves and you can jump onto that. But
Right.
I think a lot of people were made curious because they just didn't know what our government was doing around the world.
Right.
So when people want to, bomb our country, and then people start asking, well, why do they hate us? And then the reason that we're given by our president at the time is, well, they hate us because of our freedoms.
Right.
Some people, some people, that answer was good enough. And
Yeah,
then some
right,
people were
right.
like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like that it has nothing to do with natural resources. It has
Right.
nothing to do with like control and geopolitical shit. Like
Yeah.
it's just they don't like our freedoms.
Yeah.
And
That's yeah.
so it was like a world changing event,
Right.
and then for me it was like those zeitgeist documentaries came out around 2008, I think, something like that, and I
Mm-hmm.
was getting into that. And then 2010, 2011, it was like Occupy Wall Street
Right.
blew up, and
Yep.
everyone's like, why are people so upset? And it was
Right.
like, again, it's this opportunity to like ask questions, to
Right.
like dig
Right.
in.
But that's an
Whenever I'll go ahead.
that's an example of that. Occupy Wall Street is that it just kind of happened, and it's like, yeah, there was people behind the scenes always pushing that,
Yeah.
getting to get people educated, but unless that's your purpose in life as like an artist, a citizen, it's you kind of have to, you support the things that you believe in and you wait for
You can
that
only do so
moment,
much.
kind of, like I
Yeah.
I remember, I had my protest days in the 90s during the Gulf War, and I remember going to these protests, and you know, I got some crazy stories about that. It was like I went to one an anti-war protest, and it was accidentally a pro-war protest. It was like the first time I went to, no, I went to the first time we went to the pro-war protest accidentally as anti-war protesters, and it was all people that were like, yeah, America number one, and there was two cops walking around and tons of people, and the cops were like, you guys should probably leave. and we're like,
To
okay, we
you.
probably should leave. So
Oh
I mean,
wow.
we stayed for a while. It was scary. It was scary because they were like, people were like, there was a handful of protesters and people were getting their signs like torn down and almost getting into fights and stuff. And I had my kid with me because I brought
Wow.
him along to show him that stuff. And so we stayed for a while and then left. And then I went to the right one, weeks later, the anti-war one, and there was
Hmm.
way less protesters, way less people, and 20 times as many cops. Tons of cops, video cameras filming us, cops on motorcycles across the street, all in a row. Anyone that honked in support, they would pull them over and give them a ticket. Cops in
Wow.
riot gear standing just like, and the tension, you could feel it. And there was way less people. So it was like, that was such a, that was like kind of proof to me that what I was learning about was actually true. It's like, it's not the way you think it is, because
Yeah. Who
the,
are
the
they really
difference,
worried about?
yeah, the difference couldn't be more stark going to those two protests. It was like, whoa, this is pretty scary shit. Um,
That's like an interesting experiment because
right.
I wouldn't normally go to like a pro war.
I wouldn't
I mean,
either.
pro war. It's like it's fucking
Yeah.
crazy. But like now, I'm kind of like curious. I'm like,
Well,
not to disguise
you
myself or
could see it
something,
all
but
on YouTube. Yeah, you could go to a Trump rally on YouTube. There's
oh
all
yeah,
kinds
that's
of
true. I
videos of
don't
that
actually
stuff.
need to get.
But
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I totally I get you. I guess my point wasn't like, I wasn't trying to say you shouldn't do anything and just wait.
Hmm.
It's more because when I was younger, I was like, I gotta do something, and it was like,
Yeah, yeah,
very more a sense of desperation. And then I don't know, 30 years later, it's more like, okay, you can't do you can't do it unless you have a group, unless it's like time for the thing to happen. It's more of an esoteric way of looking at things, I suppose. It's like you kind of have to wait for the moment to happen, and
hmm
and I don't know. It's gonna go the way it's gonna go, sort of. Just like the way now there's two wars happening, two major wars, and it's like fascism all over the country, fascism all over the world is happening. All these fascist leaders are rising up. It's like this is what's happening right now, and
Yeah,
it's like you gotta kind of like survive. Sometimes you just gotta survive it because it won't last.
yeah,
It's like things go up and they go down and go up and they go down.
yeah,
That's like the way of the world forever.
yeah. For me, I feel like to tie it back into my art, maybe is like a lot of the work that I started making, like maybe in the second half of like my gallery career, um, is more influenced by the stuff I was learning at the time.
Mm,
And it is more esoteric because like you might not get the references except for like maybe a little bit of what the title is.
right.
And then like if you happen to like know what I'm reading or listening to at the time,
Yeah.
but it's just like in 2014, I think I finished this painting called Driverless, and I had been reading all these books about like the singularity type stuff, if you're familiar with that, like
Yeah.
Ray Kurzweil, yeah,
Yep.
exponential growth, computing power, all this stuff.
Yep.
And people were tying it into automation, driverless cars, unemployment, technological unemployment, stuff like that. And um, like, so that's an example of like how my art started to reflect the things that I was interested in, because the image that I painted, it's just, it's a lady in the passenger seat of a car and her hair is kind of like blowing around in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's titled driverless. So the assumption would be the car is driving
Yeah.
itself and
Yeah.
like humans are just whatever. Um, but I wrote a blog post about it, and I was connecting things like exponential growth and the singularity and to its effects on the economy and, all that stuff. And back then I started learning about basic income too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote this blog post, and I was like, here's what I'm learning about. Here's what seems to be happening. Technology is getting better and better and better. And like, we're at this point in history where like shit's starting to get really fucking good. Like the computers are getting really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, potential solution, basic income. And of course, like some of the first comments on that post, because maybe it's kind of risky, and it's cool that like they like weren't checking what I was writing on that blog post. But like some of the first comments were like, if I wanted to learn about some fucking political thing, I would have went to a different blog. I'm just here to look at art, shut the fuck up. And I was like, oh wow, people are angry,
Right.
and like fast forward 10 years, it's been an interesting ride because A,
right.
Occupy Wall Street, B, Bernie Sanders,
Mm-hmm.
C, Andrew Yang, who mainstreamed this concept of exponential growth and technological unemployment and artificial intelligence, robotics, all these things making more and more of our jobs like unstable or obsolete.
Right.
And and then where we are today, where it's like, you can go back a decade, and I'm writing this article about artificial intelligence and its potential to produce imagery that looks good. And now like AI is it's doing whatever it's doing, and 10 years from now, again, like it's not linear growth, it's exponential. So
Right.
things are ramping up, things are doubling. What will it do in 10 years? What will it do in 20 or 40 years?
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of ties into my idea that you can't really do anything about it until there's a moment, because that's part of why people are going crazy, I think, because people are obviously going crazy. It's like people are losing their shit all over, at least online, and it's because everything is changing so fast that nobody can keep up with it. Nobody can anticipate what the next thing's going to be. Nobody, not even these people doing the AI. It's like, it's happening. It's the singularity. It's happening so fast that you can't hold on to anything for any kind of security that we used to have as human beings. So it's like, you have to either be okay with letting go and sort of like, I hate, trusting the universe or whatever, and realizing I can't control this, and there's not really anything to hold on to except my own values. Everything else is changing so fast, everything, and it's gonna keep speeding up.
It's going to keep speeding up.
So it's going to get more chaotic and weird and crazy. But the thing is like, it puts everybody at a disadvantage. Like nobody's going to be able to predict it. Not even like, the tech leaders. Nobody.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be like, nobody can predict shit now, because it's just going to be going faster and faster. Changes, just like just like algorithms work on like Instagram or social media. Like the people who made the algorithms don't even know how they work.
Yeah.
I was talking.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone who, or I heard in a talk, an artist who talked to someone who worked at Instagram that was quitting, and she said she got him kind of drunk, and he started like spilling his guts about working on social media and the algorithms, and he was like saying, we don't even know how this stuff works now. It's like we set it in motion and we don't know how it's like doing its own thing, and we don't know what catches the algorithm until something catches the algorithm, which is totally crazy.
My thing is like, so one of the reasons that that Zeitgeist Addendum is one of my favorite documentaries, because like it points out a problem. and then it gives you this potential solution,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, okay, critique this solution and make it better. And so for not just artists, but like for anyone experiencing these dramatic disruptions and technological innovation, where we in the United States are having a certain experience, but that's not the experience globally.
Right.
So if you're an artist that lives in a developed country, or like in Scandinavia, for example, they have some of the best universal healthcare systems.
Right.
They have some of the best, public social welfare policies. And so if you're dealing with exponential growth and disruption in Finland, your life is going to be way less stressful than if you're dealing with those same disruptions in the United States.
That's true.
And the point being that, sadly, we live in the United States. I love the United States, but I want it to be better than it is.
Right.
And I think that means taking care of its citizens better. And, in all these different studies, when you compare health, well-being, levels of inequality, the U.S. often ranks at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be the case. So if you have robots taking all the jobs, if you have AI making artists obsolete in some sense, even if it wasn't scraping images, what policies would enable humans to thrive as our technology advances?
Mm-hmm.
Would a basic income help people feel more secure, less stressed out? Would universal health care allow you to quit your job and try to work on your own, because you're going to have health care whether or not?
And these are all things that are doable. It's just a matter of finding the political will, pushing the leaders, basically pushing the politicians,
Yeah. And that's kind of like, I feel like a sense of purpose about some of these things, because okay, for example, tying it back into my own artwork, one of my recent pieces is titled Critical Path. And it's a black and white pencil drawing. And the image is like an iceberg floating in water. And, there's a face in the iceberg. And above it are these clouds and like the night sky. It's like the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like you're entering warp drive from like Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And the reflection on the bottom of that scene is, instead of a face in the iceberg, it's a skull. And instead of a warp drive, it's like a nuclear explosion.
That's cool.
And so you can flip this piece upside down and you look at it either way. Yeah. So it's like very symmetrical.
That's super cool.
And there's like
talking about.
Yeah, it's like a diamond motif.
Yeah.
It's like contained in a diamond. And what that piece is for me, I called it Critical Path because there's a book called Critical Path. It's by Buckminster Fuller. He's this super well-known inventor, engineer dude.
Futurist.
And so back in the 80s, he was talking about, we have the technology to allow all humans on the planet to live a life of luxury.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
Makes me crazy.
And so that was a nod to Buckminster Fuller. It's a nod to Jacques Fresco, all these like engineer, smart, intellectual types who are like, how do we upgrade our political economic system to allow people to thrive, especially when our technology is going faster and faster and faster. It could mean our lives get better and better and better.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, because our technology is outpacing our governance. It's outpacing like our political structures.
Yep.
But that image is, the top half is our potential.
Yeah.
It's our potential to maybe in a few hundred years reach some type of post-scarcity Star Trek
Right.
type existence, and the bottom half is basically Mad Max.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So this is okay. So to me, this is, well, obviously, this is how you do it. This is how you, as an artist, does what you do while promoting this idea, promoting, helping this agenda to get out there in the world. It's like this is the thing. It's like, you know, you can do a disservice to the point that you're trying to make by being like too on the nose with political art. If
Yeah.
you know how it is. If you're
I
too,
don't like punching people in the face with the
yeah,
message,
yeah,
but I
that
can't help but be influenced to
right.
try and express myself.
Right,
Yeah.
but that painting is a great example of how you do political art, I think, because it's not beating you over the head with it, and the information is there for those who want to go and like read the book. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
to learn about it. So you're like promoting this idea in a kind of not in your face way. It's like sometimes being subtle about it is more powerful than beating people over the heads with it. And it also, the artwork works on multiple levels as well. You know what I mean? Because it's like you can look at that piece and it can mean that, and it could mean, you could kind of take it on a micro level to the individual, and relate it to like the individual potential to which way they can go in their own lives. You know what I mean? It works on
Yeah.
multiple levels because it's open, it's vague enough to be open to
You can
multiple.
interpret it.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
which
can
is,
relate to it. Yeah.
yeah, which is what makes art great. I think that
Those
political
are my
art,
favorite art. Like my favorite art, I can interpret.
right?
And, and, and yeah. And I think that's why I do what I do, is because some of my favorite artists are like, you look at this image and you go, shit, that's awesome. And you're like, wait, like
Yeah,
you might hear different people interpret it in different ways. And like, it's cool,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, it's nice. Like you want to let the viewer relate to it in however they will. Like, yeah, I don't like punching people in the face with a message. I mean,
yeah.
I do enough posting about that's
Yeah.
explicit. Like, it doesn't
That's what
need to be
social
in my
media is
artwork.
for. Yeah. So I just think that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. I've got a piece, a painting called Siamese Clowns, which is like two-headed clown, and it's, you wouldn't know it if I didn't point it out, but it's totally a political commentary. It's like the side on the left has these certain features that represent the left in the country, and the clown on the right, it's like two clowns, and the clown on the right has certain features like smoking a cigar, and they just have different expressions. The one on the left is kind of scared as the one on the right, and the one on the right's kind of grim and mean looking, and it's all got red and blue coloring in it, and red, white, and blue as well with the faces. And it's like, that's, if you look hard enough, you can go, yeah. But as I tell this to my students, you know, the work should work. Your work should work visually without anyone knowing the meaning. It should still be a great painting. And
Yeah.
then the meaning, if you have like a deeper meaning, it's there for people who want to look deeper. And that's the
Yeah.
power, because like when you see something and you're like, man, I love that painting, and then like a year later you realize what it was about, that's when it makes you go, oh man, I got to read the book. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's like powerful. That's a way to powerfully, um, you know, uh, uh, change a person's perspective, or really, have an impact on their life in that way. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to make good art.
First.
I feel like visually, that's the first thing.
Right.
It's got to be interesting and engaging visually, and then the content of the piece. Hopefully you'll pull the viewer in enough to like maybe want to ask questions, and
Exactly.
maybe yeah, like I give hints of things with my titles.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and then you can tell like, oh, what was Eric reading that year? It's like, what kind of art was I making?
Yeah, and never underestimate the power of a good title of a painting too, because it's like a good title can really make a painting work. It's like it can activate a painting, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
and a lot of time, I mean, I've named things just stupid things in the past, especially early on when I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just like, I need a name for this. It's going to show tomorrow. I'm gonna, some dumb name, but but to me, titles are so important now. Like they mean a lot, and they really can make a big difference to the success of the piece, I think. But I want to get before, it's getting, we're coming on like, what time do we, we're at an hour and a half now. So I,
Oh
I don't,
wow.
I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to, um, talk a little bit technical stuff
Yeah, yeah,
if you're cool with that. Cause
totally.
another thing I love about your work, we'll talk more about how great you are, is that as a painter, as someone in like the contemporary art scene, low, whatever you call it, pops, I don't, who knows what it's called now, but it, you know, for me as an oil painter, you're encouraged. John Singer Sargent is like, or Richard Schmid. These guys are like held up as the best oil painters because they do the loose brush strokes. It's all about the economy of the brush stroke, and it looks messy when you look up close and you back up and it looks right, and which is great. It's a way to paint. That's great,
Yeah,
but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be precise and tight in the way that your work is, or like Cam De Leon was always like this too. I don't know if you know Cam, but
yeah.
I see,
Well, I know his work.
yeah, yeah, I see a definitely similarity between
Hmm,
your guys' taste, I guess I could say, just in that
I can see that.
everything's pristine and done right. And so as a painter in the scene, feel like you and people like Cam as well. It was like, for me, it was like, oh, okay, so I don't have to paint loose. I don't have to be loose. It's okay to be like precise and uh not, I don't have to paint like Sargent. I can paint clean and tight, and it still is amazing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So when you came out doing those paintings, to me it was like it was like you know you giving, it gives people permission to paint like that, because a lot of oil painters especially you get like um almost like pressure if you're not doing it. Like Jeremy Lipking is a good example of someone who does that looser. He gets kind of tight, but that very painterly style. There's like pressure if you're a painter to paint like that, and
hmm,
I've always had, it's hard for me to paint like that, and so so it was like it was cool to see, like I said, I felt like it was giving permission to, making me feel like, it's okay that I'm not super loose painter. You know what I mean?
that's interesting because I mean, my favorite artists were illustrators.
Right.
Throughout college is when I started to be exposed to more artists that were really influential on what I was doing. And some of them were painterly, and some of the, but like most of them were like pretty tight, on the technical side.
Yeah, yeah.
I always loved that.
Yeah, I
I
saw
do
it.
like to.
You like
Okay,
Waylon and
yeah,
John Jude
Michael Whalen, John
Palancar.
Jude Palancar.
Yeah, those are
There
guys
was,
I loved too
yeah,
growing up.
yeah. Well, John lives in Ohio here, and so one of my professors was friends, Joe Kovach. He had a huge influence on me
Oh, cool.
in college. He's friends with Palancar, so he brought him into class one day, and I
No
was like,
way.
blew my mind,
He
right? I'm like, what? This is
did all those
crazy.
awesome book covers, man. I used to
Still good.
love those things.
Yeah. And I feel like I was probably already going in this direction, but like it was very like iconic imagery. Like
Yeah.
I'm not normally trying to like paint like a crowd of people.
Right, right.
For me, it's like this thing happening.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah.
one singular thing usually. Um, but yeah, I like having some loose aspects, but like I'm really happiest when I got a tiny brush in my hand and I'm just like I could do that forever.
Same here, man. I'm so glad to hear that, because I was like that in effects too. I was like nobody liked to do pores and detail. Like that's most people just like to do like the broad strokes, and they're more about the form, which is absolutely important in sculpture. But I was so into detailing. I love doing every pore at a time, just like totally getting it perfect and
Yeah, it's
clean.
like meditation. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So I'm glad to hear that, because I love that also. I know, I have discussions with Gabe Leonard. I don't know if you know Gabe Leonard, but he's a painter,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
he's way he's a guy that paints loose in a way I wish I could paint loose, but
That's the other thing. Like I always want to paint that
I
way and
know.
I'm just not that person.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the thing. And it's like, we've discussed this on the podcast where we both admire each other's way of working, and we both were like, man, I wish I could do that. And it's just like a grass is always greener type thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
for
but
sure.
but I guess that was my point was, you having, you kind of showing. I don't want to blow too much smoke up your ass, but it's like it felt like to me, you having the courage to do kind of more tight illustrative work in a gallery setting was good for people like me, who naturally painted like that, but felt like I had to try and paint looser than I
Hmm.
was. You know what I mean? And
That's so interesting because, like, when I was looking at the scene from the outside, um, I must have just been looking at more of the kind of tightly rendery
yeah,
kind
like
of painters
Lori
already.
Early is a good example. If she was
Oh,
doing,
yeah.
also doing it
Amazing.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to hear you say that, I'm like, I was like following you guys. Well, I mean, what I was doing what I'd already been doing in publishing and
Right.
in my personal life, like with my personal pieces, you just like what you like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I guess it's sort of the difference is it's two different scenes really. It's not that pop surrealism, whatever scene we're talking about, the contemporary scene, is more accepting of illustration type art
yeah,
versus the more Jeremy Lipking
yeah.
Arcadia Gallery. They're more like traditionalist type painters. So I guess I don't know. It's probably my just me, my own personal insecurities of feeling like I should be
Got
able to
plenty of them.
paint loose like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
so as far as your technique goes, how are you doing this? How are you doing these paintings?
Yeah. I feel like I've probably written a number of like process
Oh,
posts.
on your blog?
And the basic, well, I was just going to go through like what I normally do is just outline my basic process, which is, really loose thumbnails, like super loose.
That's your initial idea is a thumbnail
Yeah,
sketch.
yeah. Just get the idea out, basic composition, and like maybe 2 by 3 inches. That way
Mm-hmm.
you don't give yourself a chance to get caught up in the details.
Right.
And those, remarkably, I mean, at least for me, if it looks good at that scale, when I blow it up, it
Totally.
tends to work out.
I agree.
And then, I'm doing a refined drawing. I'm not getting photo reference at this point. I'm just trying to tighten things up a bit. Once I got things, the figure where it's going to be, like a value study, like some sense of where the light source is. I tend to go for like, stronger light sources, well, in a lot of my pieces at least. But and once I get, a few extra details in there, just tightening up my drawing, I'm asking someone to pose for me. And, obviously at that point, like on my drawing, it's like I kind of have a sense of what I want them to wear. I have a sense of where the lighting is,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'm doing like a really rough color study as well, just to get a sense of like, whatever. Go to the thrift store, buy what you need, dress them up, get them lit, and take a ton of reference, because it's always good to have information that you end up not needing, then
Yeah,
need it, and then have to try and fudge it. And
definitely.
that's going to be more important for someone like me who's trying to be more on the kind of realistic side. Um,
Right.
but if you're like heavily stylized, or like have really um, you're not rendering as much, maybe things are more flat, maybe that stuff isn't as important. But if you're trying to be a little more realistic looking, I think photo reference is key.
Mm-hmm.
um Beyond that, like, when I do my final drawing, it's on watercolor paper, and I'll do some shading to show where like the core of shadow is, any cast shadows, and so the drawing is pretty tight at that point.
Okay.
And from there on out, it's just thin layers of uh, acrylic paint. And I usually
On
start off
watercolor
with,
paper?
yeah. And I'll
Wow.
usually start off doing some like I'll get the whole paper um, nice and wet, and I'll do like some loose, drippy, wet on wet stuff, just kind of like block things in a little bit.
And that's not
And
no watercolors, just with acrylic?
it's acrylic, but the
Wow.
technique is very
Yeah,
watercolor.
yeah. They definitely have a watercolor vibe to them.
Yeah. And it's because I think it's because I grew up like painting with those like super cheap like Prang watercolor sets,
Mm-hmm.
and I just spent so much time like messing with those. It was what I was comfortable with. And
Right.
in college, when I had a chance to take some watercolor classes, I was like, oh, I'm going to try and get better at this. But then I realized, at least personally, there were things about watercolor that um, were hard for me. There were kind of like limits. Like, you can only do so many layers of watercolor, and it'll start to get muddy, or the paint will start to lift off the
Mm.
page. And one of the reasons I moved over to acrylic washes with the basic same technique is, I can do 50 different layers. But if I want to tone the whole thing yellow, I don't have to worry about anything shifting around or getting
Right.
muddy. It's just going to be a nice, even tone.
Yeah. So no
Um,
no acrylic mediums, you're just kind of using acrylic and water.
just acrylic and water. Yeah.
Interesting.
There is, pros and cons. I feel like the pro is it's permanent, so when it dries, it's not going to move around or lift up. And one of the cons is, in order to get, like, if you get a red watercolor paint, you can have a nice runny wash that's also really intense. It's a deep red, and it's watery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, but in order to have that same uh, viscosity, I guess, like that same runniness, um, it's the intensity of the color. It's really reduced, so I end up having to
I
do
see.
that wash like 15 times instead of twice.
Okay. Interesting.
And so it's very time consuming. It's a slow build.
Yeah.
uh, it works for me because when I make mistakes, they're really transparent, small
You
mistakes, and I can,
just have to
it's
catch them
easy to
early enough.
adjust as I go. Um, but yeah, and so it's just a lot of thin washes.
Wow. So Travis Louis kind of paints like this. You know Travis?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think he's
I saw.
he's doing
Oh,
really thin, fine acrylic washes, I believe.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and his technique is like
yeah,
awesome.
crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
crazy.
good.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna talk to my friend Steve Clef. Do you know Steve Clef?
I don't think so.
He's a watercolor painter, and
Uh,
he's really good. I'm sure you dig his stuff, but I'm always he's watercolor guy, and so I'm always like, anytime I hear any sort of watercolory things, I always ask him about it, talk to him about it. Um,
Is that how do you spell his last name?
uh,
I'll look him up.
Cleff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah,
Cool.
there's not a lot of watercolor artists out there. Yeah, I was wondering. I thought that you were a watercolor artist. I guess I kind of assumed that because your stuff has that look, but you really get that. You get that atmospheric, smoky feeling, which I guess is that tedious layers and layers kind of gives you that. It's so cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Something I always liked about watercolors was like the granulation. You get this like speckly
Right.
texture. It's like this soft, smooth thing. Um, but yeah, and it's very transparent. So, when I do fuck up, it's really hard to fix, like fix it opaquely and then to try and make it blend in and look
Right.
transparent. It's like it kills me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a slow process for
Yeah,
sure.
that's what I was gonna say. It's like between the photo reference and the clothing, it seems like making a single painting is a long process for you.
Yeah, it is. When I was in like my prime illustrator days, I was definitely a lot more efficient and more of a go-getter. But I also worked in sizes that I think made sense for deadlines. There was like more like 12 by 18
Okay.
versus 22 by 30.
Right.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but going up to the 22 by 30, like doubles or triples the amount of hours it takes for me to finish a painting. Is
Yeah, that
kind
makes
of crazy.
sense.
Yeah, and the last painting I did, I was like, it's kind of, after getting burned out, I'm like, well, maybe part of it is like it's too tedious. Like my technique is too tedious, and so like let me try some oil paints. And so the last painting I did, it was like a really big piece. It was 44 by 50 inches.
Damn, that's big.
Yeah, it's the biggest painting I've ever
I don't
done.
think I've ever painted that big before. I think 36
I
by
don't
40
I'm
is
going
the
to do it.
biggest I've ever done.
I worked on it for like over 4 years,
Oh my
on and
god.
off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just a painting in the background, and I would do a few other paintings, while I was working on that. And that piece is at a gallery show now.
Mm.
But that was oil on canvas because I was like, I should give oils another try. Maybe I can speed things up or whatever. And the realization I had is like, I'm just a noodler.
Yeah.
I'm just a tedious, noodly painter. And I'm not like, everything is just a horrible grind in my head until I pick up my small brush, and then I can just do that forever. But
Right.
when I'm like, the small brush usually happens a little in the beginning and then at the very end, but like the 80% in the middle is just like this slow buildup, and
Yeah.
it's rough.
But that's what I like about that technique is that you have more control.
Yeah,
It's very controlled. It's very like slow and methodical and controlled,
for sure.
Uh
It's very dependent on you got to have a really good uh drawing
yeah,
underneath,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that structure will hold everything together.
Right.
And it goes well because you're just doing these thin transparent layers over a solid drawing.
Right.
And so you're slowly building up skin tone, slowly building up, whatever. And yeah, if you get the drawing, like if for anyone who wants to try that technique, I'd recommend, not going too big. Try seriously, like try like a 8 by 12 painting. Like you'd be surprised how much detail you can get in there. Do a really nice drawing and then just, do some thin washes over your drawing.
What are you sealing the drawing with?
That first layer of acrylic, it seals it.
Oh, really? It doesn't
Yeah.
screw the
No,
pencil?
and my pencil drawings are usually like, I'd probably say like a 2H to a B or a 2B. So like maybe a 2B would be as dark and as soft as I get. And it's always scary, like when the paper is perfectly white. So the first thing I do after I get my drawing down is like I mix a really nice thin wash that is kind of like in the whatever color, like overall color I'm aiming for, I'll just do a nice, really thin wash over the entire thing, and that seals the drawing
Hmm.
and gets rid of all that pristine white. So it kind of like helps me relax a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So when you're creating your reference, do you do that in Photoshop, your photo reference and stuff? Do you like mock it up in Photoshop and tweak
Yeah.
it and kind of draw in there, to get it the way you want?
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm usually, like I said, like a lot of the anatomy doesn't always make sense, so I'm just piecing together my figure photo reference in Photoshop. But sometimes I'll do, like, I usually start off that way, and then if I get confused in the middle of a painting, which happens often, like should this be more red or should this be brighter, or like I just feel like I'm probably staring at it for too long and I'm
Hmm.
kind of lost, and I'll do like take a photo of my painting midway through, bring it into Photoshop, and
Yeah,
and try and mess with it a little
I do
bit.
that
That
too.
usually
Yeah,
helps.
yeah,
I know just enough Photoshop to get by. Like, I'm not a technical person.
that's a great technique though. I do that a lot. Bring it into
Well, I
Photoshop.
get confused a lot, so it helps. Seriously, I step back, I turn it upside
Yeah,
down, I take a photo of it, I turn my phone upside
yeah.
down, I shrink it. Like, I'm just trying to get fresh eyes.
Turn it
I'm
black and
always
white.
taking my stuff. I always go to the bathroom because there's a nice big mirror in there, and I'll just hold it in the bathroom and
Hmm.
turn it around, like what's missing. And
Right.
that usually helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. What was the other thing I wanted to ask you? Uh, oh, how do you transfer your drawing do you project it or do you do a grid or?
Yeah, I um I usually I start to save time because everyone hates transferring like details, and maybe sometimes you just got to do that. But I I started um, after I get my photo reference, I'd blow up my thumbnail sketch because
Right,
or the refined drawing, because the composition is basically there,
right,
and I'm distorting anatomy enough that if this leg is super long or whatever, like like I want that energy um and distortion to be happening. So I blow up my thumbnail sketches, or like I said, my refined drawing, and I'll use a light table to just very loosely just get the basic gesture of the piece, and yeah, on a light table, and then 5 minutes tops to like transfer basic composition, and then I'll go in
mm.
on the watercolor paper and do my final drawing over top of the loose transfer,
Oh,
just the one.
okay, interesting. So you're doing a lot of drawing on your painting before you start painting. Like you're putting a lot of effort into drawing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not
the
just transferring a
transfer.
bunch of lines. It's like you're just doing a
Yeah,
basic transfer and then actually shading it
and then I'm
and
doing my final drawing just the once. And the pro is you're not doing the same exact drawing twice, which it hurts your soul.
yeah.
And the con is if you make too many mistakes and you have to erase a lot. If you're working on watercolor paper, you could damage the surface of the paper, and
Right,
then when you paint over it, it's not going to look the way you want it to look.
right.
So it helps. Again, if anyone wants to try this out, use a soft pencil when you're doing that final drawing, um, because you are going to erase, and then use a nice soft, clean, kneaded eraser, and then just be very mindful of the surface of your paper. Yeah, don't press too hard,
Do you have
so it's easier to erase.
right? Do you have a specific type of watercolor paper you like to use?
Arches. When I'm doing small pieces, like let's say 12 by 20 ish or 15 by 20, um, Arches watercolor paper, cold press at 140 pounds.
Okay.
If I'm doing a bigger painting, then like 22 by 30, which is like a full sheet, I'll do hot press at 300 pound.
Well, what's the
And
difference between hot press and cold press?
hot press is smoother. Cold press has more of a tooth, and
Okay.
cold press at the lighter weight, it's a more subtle texture. But cold
Okay.
press at the heavier weight, it's like a really heavy tooth, like a heavy texture. And I personally, it's too much.
Right.
It's too much texture for me. So those two things I mentioned, hot press at 300 and cold press at 140, the textures they're kind of similar,
Okay.
but yeah, if you get cold press at 300, you'll get these really deep shadows, and I just feel like it's too much for me.
Right. That's so
I
interesting.
like a little bit of I like a little bit of tooth, but not too much. And then
Okay.
sometimes hot press at the lower weight, sometimes it feels too slick.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever tried doing oil on Arch's oil paper? Have you ever tried Arch's oil paper?
I have not.
It's really cool. It's like it tripped me out when I found out about it. I didn't know it existed. It's like paper, like thick paper that you could just paint oils. You don't have to gesso it or anything.
Wait, it's what's it called again?
Arches.
Arches
It's just Arches oil paper. As far as I know,
oil
it's
paper.
just one.
Okay.
Yeah, one type. It
Cool.
tripped me out though. It's great. It's great for doing little oil studies and stuff. You know, it's just if you do mess with oils more, you might like it because it arches. It's kind of similar probably to what you're painting on for your acrylic stuff.
Yeah, that last oil painting I did, oh, it was learning oils so hard for me. Like painting opaquely or even like semi-opaquely is, excuse me. Um, I am not used to mixing colors like that. I'm always building
Yeah.
something up transparently.
That,
So painting opaquely it was torture.
yeah.
But at the very end, it was starting to click, and it was
Right.
like when you get into that flow state, it was like, oh, this is fun. Like I
Yeah.
could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you figure it out, it's super fun. You might like the grisaille technique where you do the black and white underpainting to you do your
And
painting
then
and fit to finished till it's finished, and then all your colors are kind of glazed on top because that's
mm,
sort of how
yeah,
I
sounds kind of like
learned.
what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, and glazing in oils is so cool. It's so nice. It just feels so good. Use transparent paints or semi-opaque because there's different transparencies on the paints. And
Is that how you work?
uh,
Or
I used to not really anymore, but because it takes longer. I still do sometimes, and I'll basically try and get everything uh, kind of direct painting as close as I can, and then if I want to shift colors of areas, I'll do glazing here and there. You know,
like at the very end?
yeah, yeah. But I love glazing. I love glazing. It's so nice. Especially in oils. It's really great. But it's a really cool technique. It reminds me of, like you said, of the way you do it because it's very controllable. Because when you do your underpainting, you just worry about um, the values and getting the drawing right and the painting right, and you're not thinking about color at all. And then then you can it's you can if you paint if you get a good color, like they call it the dead layer, which is kind of like I'm not sure what the old masters used for the color combination, but it's like not black and white. It's like black and or white and raw umber, or white and black and yellow ochre or something. So it's kind of a warmer
Hmm.
values. It's not because black and white, when you mix it, it's just very a cold gray, which is kind of
Yeah.
ugly. But if you can kind of get this greenish underpainting, it's really nice to glaze over, and then it's like you let some of the underpainting show through, so you get like those weird greenish undertones coming through in the skin. It's really cool. It's really fun.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely want to try my hand at oils again. Like it was, I could see myself getting into that,
It's
but
fun.
the learning process it was so much for me.
Were you
I mean,
using?
that's why I had that painting on on the wall for
Yeah,
like
that's why it took you 4
4
years.
years, because it was like slowly. I didn't want to have a deadline for myself. It was
Right.
just a personal piece, and I was like, I want to give this thing as much time as it needs to look the way I want it to
Right.
look.
Did you use a medium? Any mediums while you're painting?
Yeah,
Linseed oil or
linseed
liquid?
oil, linseed oil.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Um, so where are you? What do you got going on now with your work? Would you have any shows happening, or where are you
I'm
at with it?
yeah, I'm stepping away from shows again. I had a few shows recently, or I not for me personally, like solo shows, but I had a few pieces in some shows. There was Rock LaRue had like their 25th
Oh, okay.
anniversary, and I had a piece in there. Um, Corey Helford had like 40th anniversary for The Last Unicorn that I was invited to.
Mm,
And so, seeing that cartoon as a kid was like pretty awesome. So that felt like a great opportunity. That was the first show I'd shown in since taking time off.
wow.
Yeah. And then the most recent show is right now, actually, at Arch Enemy Gallery
Oh,
is that big oil painting that I
oh, that's
finished.
it. That's at the show that opened last Friday.
Yeah, like a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Steve Clef's in that show. My friend Steve Clef, I was talking about.
Okay.
He's got these
Awesome.
5 hexagonal little pieces. I don't know if you
Cool.
saw them, but yeah,
Well,
that's
it's been like either it's that my brain is like I'm having a brain fart, but it might have been the show just before that
okay.
or that show, but I dropped it off, me and some friends, and threw my painting in the back of a pickup truck. Drove over to Philadelphia to drop that off.
How long?
It rained the entire way. It
Oh
was
man,
crazy.
how long is the drive?
It's like 7.5 hours.
Damn.
Not too bad. It was a
Yeah.
nice. It was, well, like I said, luckily the painting we wrapped it up really good because it was like 7 hours of rain,
Oh my
and it was
god.
just in the back, of the of the bed. So
Wow.
it arrived safely, but I was like really happy. It was like wrapped in plastic and then in a wooden box, and that was wrapped in plastic.
Oh, there you go. That's how you got to do it. So do you have any plans for what's going on? Are you going to
Oh yeah,
try and do prints and merch and stuff like that?
yeah. That's the plan. I'm going to start applying to conventions and stuff, and get a booth and try and move some prints. I want to see. I haven't tried printing anything on a like a t-shirt or anything yet, but I'm definitely interested in that and like pins and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many different types of things I'm going to work on, but currently I'm just like reformatting a bunch of my paintings to like 12 by 18 so I can like have some decent prints of stuff.
Cool.
And like that's kind of where I'm at now, is just getting artist proofs, checking the color, stuff like that. But yeah, hopefully I'll start to fill up my calendar with convention dates where I'll go and try my best and hopefully sell some stuff.
Yeah. You got to put them on your website too. You got to get your web shop happening.
Yeah, that's the other thing I need to do. So I got like a checklist of like shit I need to upgrade and just start going through it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hit me up if you need any help or advice, because I've been doing web sales for 20 years now, I think. 15.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I probably will.
Something like that. I can't do math.
Long time.
Long time.
Too long.
Yeah, I know where to get all the print boxes and the cardboard all the shipping supplies, all the shopping cart. I know all that stuff. So
yeah, that's perfect. I've been reaching out to a few people here and there who are doing like the convention circuit, and just reading up everyone's blog posts or watching their how-to videos that they've made. It it's super nice that everyone's been super helpful so far, and I'm glad people are posting stuff online about their experiences, because it's it's definitely helpful, and I feel like a noob, and it's overwhelming because I'm trying to take in all this new information, but it's starting to stick a little bit.
Well, just remember the perception is that you are some mysterious elite artist above everyone else. Just...
I'll try my best. I have to like buy a tux or something when I go to the conventions and just stand on a ladder and look down at everybody.
Or just don't show up, or go in disguise and have someone else sell the work, and the person could be out. Or you could wear a disguise and be like, the artist won't go into public. You know, he doesn't go to the public. I sell for him. I'm his representative.
I like that. Although, now everyone knows what I look like. So
yeah, you could do a wig and maybe
the wig will totally throw people off. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. That was super fun, and I think there's lots of valuable knowledge for other artists, because we have a lot of artists that listen to this podcast. So I appreciate you coming on.
It's been fun, dude, and thanks a lot for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've been a huge fan, been wanting to have you on for forever. So the last thing we have to do is just say goodbye to the audience in some way. So I usually say goodbye, audience, and then the person being interviewed says goodbye in some way of their own. So you go ahead.
Peace.